Greetings hobbyists, it is cable day, and today we're going to be having a look at how to make a variety of cables, including the variations you can see on this las cutter that I produced. You can find this on CG Trader, but you won't need to because you can make these cables yourself fairly easily. So we're going to have a look at how to make these different variants, including how to make this ribbed cable and this multi-cable that's been connected together with these fastenings. Before we go any further, I'm going to say straight out that this tutorial does use a paid-for add-on called Cablerator. Yes, I know. No one likes paying for add-ons when they can do it themselves. And you can make a cable without this in Blender. But once you see how foolproof this is and how easy it is to do a lot of the stuff, you will agree that for $14, it is well worth your time. So if you don't know how to install an add-on, all you do is go to Edit, Preferences, and then you go to add-ons, and then you click install and navigate to wherever you've downloaded it to, and that will install Cablerator. You just need to tick the box to make sure it's running. And if you haven't got it automatically, save preferences. I always have auto-save preferences on, so I don't need to do that. So we're going to add some cables to this object. Now, depending on how much setup you do, you might want to have made more than this, and normally I would have done. You might even have the specific connection points that you want. We'll talk about that later, so if you've got it, you can see it's still really easy to do. But essentially, to activate Cablerator, you press Shift, Alt, and C, and you're just going to click Create Cable. Then all you do is you can still navigate around, click the point where you want the cable to start, click the point you want the cable to end, and it's made your cable. It's that easy. You don't have to faff around with anything. It's made your cable and it's good to go with a lot of additions that you can add to it. Now, you can change it. So for example, I can press S to make it scaled up or down in thickness. Okay, just click to confirm it. You can even go back, change it again. Click D. This is probably the most fun one to change the tension. So how long is that cable going to be? Now, the tension is the only one you can't change afterwards by going into the edit options, but you can just change it by moving the Bezier curve that's underlying this. I'll show you that in a second. And the other thing that you might want to do, and it's the only one that's not shown in this box that I'm aware of that I find really useful, is if I click on the X to show what this looks like, you can see this isn't as smooth as it could be, and if you click F, you can add more resolution to it by just dragging. Okay, so for example, I could go somewhere like that. If I wanted my cable to be a bit smoother, click and you've got your cable. If you want to edit it, just make sure you've selected it, Shift, Alt and C again, edit cable, and you can still, and notice it now does show that it's got a resolution to it. Okay, you can just press S to still change the width. The other thing I'd say is if this is going to be for 3D printing, which mine is, I will always press the C for fill caps so that the end of the cable is filled when you convert this into a mesh. Click off and you're done. Right, so why is this worth 14 of your hard-earned dollars? Now, it's actually all the extra bits you're going to do, and I'm going to be really clear about this. If all you want is a cable like that, just do it the same way that I showed you to make a pipe in the last video. Just draw a curve, add some thickness to it, and you're done. If that's all you want, fine. But Cablerator allows you to do lots of extra stuff. So let's start with the most basic thing that I really quite like, and that is that you can add connection points at the end, which is the geometry of where it goes into your object. So let's just Shift A. Let's make a cylinder. I'm going to bring this over to the side. I will say this is the other thing about Cablerator. It doesn't matter where stuff's placed, where if you've ever made a cable by yourself, like the placement of things gets really, really annoying. So I'm just going to move that to the side. Let's scale it down. In fact, actually, I'm going to put it on that so I can see that it's bigger than my cable. Let's make it a little bit wider. Let's S and Z to make it a bit more sort of stubby. And let's go in and I'm going to go to edge mode. Control and R to add an edge lope in the middle. Control and B to bevel that. Let's go somewhere about that. And I'm going to press Q because I've got hard ops. Alt on ear macro to take that in a little bit so it's a little bit interesting. Right, so now I've got this. I've just noticed cavity isn't on, so it's not showing really clearly. Let's do that. In fact, just for the sake of this, I'm going to bevel it, but you wouldn't want to really do this if it's for 3D printing. I'm just doing it to make it really obvious when you're seeing it. So we've got this now, and this is going to be our connection point here. In fact, actually, I'm going to go in and G and Z, move that face up a little bit so it's a little bit more interesting. Right, cool. So we need our connection points. I'm going to select my object, select the cable, and go into edit mode. Select that point and that point. Shift Alt and C, add connectors, and my connectors are there. Literally perfectly in place. And if I want to move them, just press D, okay, which changes the offset, and I can move that out. And you'll notice this has actually got it the wrong way round. I wanted the longer bit towards my object, so I just press A to flip direction, D, and I've got that there, and it's perfect. Great. Okay, connector done, and usefully I've still got that connector left there for if I want to do any more. Come back to the cable, let's have a look at that. Go back into it, edit cable, and let's just make that a little bit fatter. There we go, something like that. And I've got my cable. It's that easy with Cablerator. Now we do need to note that at this point, this is still, if I go into edit mode, a curve, which is useful because it means I can still move things around if I want to, okay, to make it look a little bit different, especially sort of around at the bottom. Okay, I can scale that to have it like wider or thinner. Okay, so it is really useful. I sometimes like shifting things around and then sort of doing that so you've got a little bit more of an interesting shape. So you can still change things around like you would do a curve. It's just that it's made everything so much quicker to do. And once I want that to be a mesh because I'm happy with it, all I do is right click, convert to and mesh, and I've got my mesh. Now if I go into edit mode, I've got all my vertices that I could edit as normal. So let's go a bit more complicated. Let's delete that. So notice I've still got the connection points here, and I'm actually going to use those because sometimes I already have connection points if I want to make it exactly in a position on my model. Let's just hide that cylinder, and let's make another cable. But this time we're going to make a ribbed cable. Now there are a couple of tricks to this if you're going to be doing it for 3D printing. So do be aware of that. If you're doing this just for CG modeling, and you don't need to worry about 3D printing, or if objects are manifold, there are a couple of things you can miss out, but they don't particularly take long, so it's not really a big problem. Shift Alt C, create cable, and I'm going to draw my cable from there to there. Let's deal straight away with my tension, so D, I think I'm going to have that a bit looser than that, maybe somewhere in the region of that. Okay, and the one thing I don't need to do is scale it, because we're just using this as the shape. In fact, I can actually scale it down just so it's this curve. Okay, so let's leave it there. Let's click off. And I need to make my bit that's going to create my ribbed effect. So Shift A, mesh, want a cylinder, and just because it's easier to do it at this point, I'm going to sort of do this around here, scale it in so it's the right diameter, and at this point, once I'm happy with that, I'm going to move it out of the way, and again, really nice and easy because I can move it out of the way. So S and Z, let's make that a bit shorter, and you can obviously make the ribs the size that you want. I'm going to go for something like that. And this is the first secret to make this look as good as possible when 3D printing. I'm going to go into face mode, select that face, select that face. I'm going to press I to inset them somewhere about there, and then I'm going to press Alt and E, and I'm going to extrude faces along normals, and I'm just going to have them stick up a little bit. Okay, and that's really useful for giving a good 3D print that's going to define the ribs really clearly. You can do it without this, but this solves a lot of issues and it makes everything really nice. Now the other thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete these faces so that we can see through it. Now this is really important for creating a manifold object because we're going to be creating an array in effect, and if we have lots and lots of faces where they join together, it's going to be a real pain, and we'd have to delete those individually, and that's going to be an absolute nightmare. I'm going to quickly go out of that, Control and A to scale it so that I can now bevel the edges. So go back into edit mode, Alt click the edge, Shift and Alt click the other edge, Control and B, and something like that should be fine. This is going to be a relatively small model, so if you were doing something larger, you might have more than 3 faces, but that should be all right. So I've got my object here, and I want to apply this to the cable. Now, again, really, really easy. Select the object, select the cable, Shift, Alt, and C, and we're going to add our segment. Now, straight away, I want it a little bit further down than that, so all of the instructions at the side. D, I'm going to offset that segment so it's about there. I want to add an array, so I'm going to select A. Straight away we've got the start of our array, and I'll just press C and go along to add to this count. There is one annoyance with Cablerator in that it doesn't allow you to sort of automatically go off the screen and come on the other side, so you do have to sort of press C, click, C, click, C, click. I mean, it's not the biggest crime in the world, but it is just something to be aware of. And again, because I don't like where that is, I'm going to click to go out of that. I'm going to press Shift and Z to go into X-ray mode, select the cable, and then I'm just going to go into edit mode. Actually, let's change that back so now I can see it. And then I'm just going to select that point, G, and let Z to move down to where I'm happy with it. Awesome looking cable. Took seconds, and if you've ever tried to do that without using Cablerator, you'd be probably insane by this point. Now, with this, because I didn't use the connectors in the way that we did with the first one, you can see that these aren't perfectly in place. So I'm actually going to go and edit these slightly again. So G, and I'm just going to move that so it's dead center, and move that one so it's dead center. And that's another reason why this adding connectors is so good, because it gets everything perfect, whereas this I'm having to fiddle around slightly. But still, really great result in almost no time. Converting this to a mesh is really important we do this correctly, because at the moment this is going to work great, but if you're doing this for 3D printing, there are some tricks. So the first thing, on my side panel here, where it's worked out and done all of the hard work for me, all of the modifiers has been done automatically, the only one I do need to click is I need to come to my modifier properties and the array and say that I want it to merge. So when I confirm this by converting it to a mesh, it's going to merge all the points that are on top of each other together. So that takes a second, but it's really important to do. Right click, convert to a mesh, and then I'm going to press slash on the number pad, and then you'll see we don't have any problems here because we can see right through, but we do need to fix the hole that is here. So I'm going to go into edge mode, F to fill that, essentially creating a cap. And then same on the other side, alt click to select the loop, and then F to fill, back into object mode. And now if I go to 3D print and check all, we'll probably have some very tiny faces somewhere because we've done with some small objects, but we'll have no issues with manifold edges. And there we go. As I said, if you've tried doing this yourself, it's sinfully annoying. So Cablerator, way to go. So let's get straight on with this multi-cable then. Now this is something that I've got asked for by quite a few people, and there's some really fun things you can do with that. Let's just duplicate these connector points. Again, I could do this the other way, but I quite like having the target. So Shift D, I'm going to move those along the Y, and we'll just do those over here. Now, there is a temptation to do multi-cables like I showed you at the beginning in a different way, and that is that theoretically you can press Shift Alt, create cable, create a cable there, and then if you press Q, you can make another one, and Q again, and another one, and Q again, and another one, and we've got all of our multiple cables coming together, which is great. Now, actually, in this instance, that probably wouldn't be too bad. Actually, there's some overlaps here. And you can do this way. In fact, there is actually a better way to do it in the newer version of Cablerator. I might actually do an extra video on that because there's some really fun stuff that they've added to Cablerator now. And with these overlaps, you could easily just tab into edit mode, G and Z, move that up, and then just fix those overlaps. And that would look fine, and you can definitely do it. In fact, it can make some really nice effects, but these cables are going to be quite thin, and for printing that's dangerous, whereas the multi-cable I'm going to show you now is more effort, but I think it looks better and you can do more things with it consistently. So let's just delete those. So let's start by making the object that is going to be our multi-cable, and essentially we're going to make the cross section of it. So Shift and A, mesh. We want a cylinder. I don't need it to have 128 vertices. 32 would be fine because this is going to get a bit smaller. You could do more than that. I mean, let's just do 64 just for the sake of it. And G, move that to the side. I need to be a bit smaller. And then we're going to turn this into a radial array. Now I've got hard ops, so I'm going to use it by pressing Q. If you don't, I've got a video on how to create radial arrays. I'll put it in the description. Radial array, and I want, what, 5? 4? 5? I like 5. I'm going with 5, so something like that. There, and I'm going to click apply all, and this empty that's been created during the process, we'll just delete that. We don't need it. Now, at this point, while this is one object, these are all sort of separate things, and that's going to cause us some problems. So essentially, we need to actually merge these together. So I'm going to press A, P, and select loose parts to separate them out. So now I've got each one as a separate thing, but importantly, they're exactly on the same plane because we used a radial array. And all I'm going to do is select all of them and then use ball tools to combine them together. If you don't have ball tool, if you go to edit, preferences, add-ons, and you just type in ball, select that, it's ball tool, comes with Blender natively, you just need to activate it, select everything, Control and plus, make sure that that solver, if you've got it small, make sure it's larger, is on exact. If you've got it on fast, this is not going to work, okay, because you've got things on exactly the same plane. So make sure that's exact, and then select the object that everything's combined to. You can see the modifiers over here. Click apply all, and then I can just delete out these extra ones that I don't need. There we go, and now I've got this. Now, this is still a mess. If I tab into vertex mode, then you can see how much of a mess this is. If you don't have this pie menu, it's because you don't have machine tools. Okay, obviously you'll just press tab and you can go into vertex mode up here. We can see all these faces overlapping here. I mean, it's got problems. So we're going to fix that. It doesn't take long. Let's go into side view, Shift and Z to go into X-ray mode. Let's just delete. I'm just deleting the top one. Doesn't really make a difference. And we need to delete these vertices that are in the middle. Essentially, we only want the outer shape that's going to be our profile. So let's select a load of vertices in the middle, something like that. Delete vertices, and then I need to be a little bit neater here. So that's the merging point. So let's just delete those. Delete vertices there. I'm going to delete those there, and because you've got this massive cluster, I mean, I can zoom in, so let's just delete those. Same again here. And so on. Now at this point, all we're going to do is A, to select all of them, press F, let's go out of X-ray mode with Shift and Z, and we've got this nice cross section. Okay, then all we're going to do is select the face, extrude it up a bit with E, and then we've got the beginning of our multi-cable. Now we've got this, we're going to go into face mode, and just like with our ribbed cable, we need to delete these faces so that our object is hollow. And that's really important so we don't have layers between each iteration of the array. So let's select that, let's select our cable, and as always, Shift, Alt and C, we want to add or edit a segment because we're adding that one in, and at the moment it's at the beginning of our cable. Press D to offset it. In fact, let's go into side view so we can do that perfectly. Shift Alt C again, add or edit segment, and we're going to array it, so A, and then all we need to do is press C, and let's keep filling that in. Again, a little annoying that you have to do this again and again and again, but it's not the end of the world, especially when you're going to make something as awesome as this. Now notice again, this isn't perfect, so I'm going to click off and I'm going to go into edit mode, G and X, let's fix that slightly, there we go, that's looking much better. Yep, happy with that. Now I just want to talk about one really cool thing about this with Cablerator and something you could do really easily. So if we Shift and Z and select the cable, and let's just make sure we're selecting the correct cable, it is that one there, and go back out. If you Shift Alt and C and go to edit the cable, Now, one of the options that I haven't mentioned here is the twist method, which at the moment is Z up. Now, if you press H, you'll change that, and this is really cool, because if you press it that way, you'll have these perfectly straight cables, okay? The tangent one has tendency, actually, this one hasn't, but sometimes it causes some problems, but you can see we've got a few more twists here. I really like this Z up version where you get this consistent twist round. I think it looks really nice, but there have been instances where I haven't used that. Now, importantly, we're going to have to fix the things that we normally do, so I'm going to select on this and click merge so that we're going to merge those vertices together. Now, if you forget to do that, it's not the end of the world. You can select everything later on. In fact, actually, let's get this wrong on purpose so I can show you what to do. If I click and convert to and mesh and then go to vertex mode, okay, you can see all of these vertices, but what you're not seeing is that each one of these, there's a vertex there, and if I press G, there's another vertex because they haven't merged together. And that could be a massive, massive problem. So all we're going to do is press A, M, by distance, and you'll see that's deleted, what, nearly 21,000 vertices. So that would have been quite a problem. And again, /, and to go into isolation mode and edge mode, and I'm just going to select that edge, F to put a cap over it, select that edge with Alt again, press F to put a cap over it, and then we have our nice object, which should be 3D printable with no major issues. There we go. Couple of small faces, but that won't cause a printing problem. Now, at this point, I've still got this cable here. Okay, it's hidden on the inside of it, and to be honest, before I printed this, I would delete this so it doesn't cause any problems. But it allows me a couple of opportunities, like bringing in another cylinder. Let's shrink that down, so S, so it's slightly wider than this multi-cable that I've just done. S and Z to make it not as tall. I'm going to move it over to the side, Shift Z, select the cable, select that, and I can Shift Alt and C, and I can add in this as another segment. If I press D, I can offset that. Now you'll notice this does deform with this, which is a slight problem. I'm going to be really honest about that. It's not perfect. I'd love this to not deform in the slightest, but I'm going to add an array, but I want this array to not join together. There is an option here which says offset array element, which is S, and that allows me to move this along, and then I can press C to up the count, and let's do that a couple of times, something like that, and I can still press D to move everything along. Let's go with something like that. So now I've got these bindings holding this cable together. So really quick, really simple way of doing that. Now again, you're going to need to convert this to a mesh, and at this point you're ready to start booleaning things together to make your final overall object for printing. So hopefully that's inspired you to start creating some cables of your own. Okay, maybe doing some of these multi-cables or these ribbed cables to add some of these really industrial feeling cables to your designs. As always, if you found this useful, please do throw a like to the video. If there's anything else you'd like to see, do say so in the comments. I'm going to be doing my next video actually on some of the newer additions to Cablerator. So if you're going to jump on and get this, then there's going to be even more for you to have a look at in that next video. I'll see you then.